the Marvels took a beating at the box office. It's not really a surprise. It didn't make its budget back, and it just barely grossed over $200 million, meaning that it was the worst performing movie in the MCU's entire history. But honestly, the most embarrassing fact about this movie is that it made just 20% of what its predecessor made. Captain Marvel grossed over $1 billion. That's a drop off of 80%. I really don't know if another movie has had this specific achievement. And honestly, I think it's time to say it. The MCU is in serious trouble. Yep, I said it. No one online has had the courage to say it, so I took it upon myself to say it. But that's not why I came out of my hole to make a video about this, because honestly, I don't think it's really mentioned enough just why the MCU has taken on such a gigantic descent. Like, obviously, the Avengers Endgame Infinity War finale was a tough act to follow. And the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 certainly didn't help. But does that really explain the catastrophic drop off, like, in traffic for the MCU? And it's not like at first there wasn't clear excitement that was still there. Spider Man No Way Home grossed almost $2 billion, so there's definitely been opportunities for superhero movies to succeed. But Marvel, well, they got a little cocky, because 2 summers ago at Comic Con, Kevin Feige pretty much told the whole world that he and Marvel Studios essentially don't have any patience and they just want the money and hype that they had during Infinity War and Endgame. And despite Phase 4 not even having finished at the time, the guy decided to announce an unfinished slate of movies for Phase 5 and 6. And if that wasn't bad enough, he announced that Avengers 5 and Avengers 6, the latter of which being Secret Wars, the biggest comic book event in superhero history, would be coming out in November 2025. Not even 1 year after the other one, which was going to be the Kang Dynasty, but you see what happened. The exact same year, both of these movies were set to come out. Now, of course, eventually the writer's strike got both movies delayed, but still, it's quite clear that the MCU was gonna be super fast paced heading into what was a gigantic event. And, at the time, the hype was really huge, mainly because it was the first big announcement for, like, a slate of MCU movies since before the pandemic. But then we almost immediately realized that this really wasn't planned out at all. Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania was supposed to truly kick off the Kang storyline and set him up as basically the next Thanos. And not only was it a disappointment critically, it also didn't do that great financially. Which, by the way, it's kind of weird for me because I saw this movie and I actually really liked it when I watched it in theaters. But not in the way Marvel wanted me to. I liked it because it was a stupid-ass movie with the worst CGI ever, and the way Ant-Man wins at the end is just so idiotic, I couldn't help but laugh. The movie is literally a meme, and if you haven't seen it yet, I encourage you to watch it, but watch it ironically, and you'll actually really enjoy it. Like, this whole movie's ending too, it felt out of place. Like, exactly what was I supposed to learn from this, and what am I supposed to get excited about? Because I really didn't know what I was supposed to be excited about, even though this movie tried to make me feel that way. And that's the thing about Marvel Studios right now. I don't think they realized how hard this was going to be. Like, a lot of important story arcs now require watching a long show on Disney Plus that clearly most people don't want to watch because they're really not that good, and the movies don't even feel like they're really building onto anything. Like, it's not coherent. And that's a big reason as to why The Marvels was a flop. And another thing I have to just mention is, why was it called The Marvels instead of Captain Marvel 2? Like, I think that this was another reason why this movie did bad. Don't get me wrong, I think it was going to be a flop no matter what, but it wouldn't have lost 80% of what the original movie grossed. Like, if it had Captain Marvel in the title. Like, a lot of people might not have even known this was a sequel to the movie they saw in theaters in 2019 because the title character isn't in the title. Like, I actually think that this, along with there being no interest in watching the movie, was a big reason as to why this gigantic catastrophe happened. And on top of this, we're now seeing that Marvel's apparently wants to move away from Kang. I mean, they fired the guy, and apparently they're also considering bringing back Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans, possibly for Secret Wars, which is a stupid idea, but, in this desperate state, yeah, I can see why they think that's even worthy of consideration. But why, oh why, is Marvel struggling to get this multiverse saga off the ground? Well, honestly, the answer is really simple, and it was kind of obvious from the moment they announced it. 3 to 4 years is not enough time to build this up. Thanos, who didn't require a multiverse to set up his arc, took a decade to build up to. This, with how convoluted it is, probably would require more than that. The Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, for them to be solid, they would probably not be able to do so with a release date in 2025, which is next year, or even 2026 and 2027. Like, I genuinely think that these movies should have been slated for either the late 2020s or early 2030s. On one hand, yeah, I mean, I'd have to wait till I'm 30 years old to see these, but on the other hand, they would be good movies, perhaps. And the MCU wouldn't have to deal with all of this right now. Like, you have to build up to things. You have to start over. You have to tell stories. The giant payoff is something that's built up to gradually and naturally, like with phases 1 to 3. That's not what happened. Like, Marvel got really cocky and desperate after Infinity War and Endgame, and it just looks like they forgot why those worked out the way they did in the first place. They had to actually build up before bringing Thanos out. Here, they just brought Kang out right away, and no one cared. And you'd think with everything they got from the Fox merger, they would have thought, hey, maybe we don't immediately have to start doing all that build-up. Maybe we can just expand the universe a little bit further and just focus on all these new stories with all these properties we bought. But no, X-Men, honestly, might not have even been planned to come out before Avengers Secret Wars. And Fantastic Four is coming out next year, which means they were going to be thrust right into what looks like was going to be the next big Avengers event, which again, Secret Wars was something that was a gigantic event that you need build up. And don't even ask me how Deadpool 3 is going to fit into all of this. I mean, I don't even know how this is going to work, but I'm still excited to see it because it's a Deadpool movie and Ryan Reynolds does a genuinely good job at it. But honestly, Marvel's, they need to have like a come to Jesus moment. They need to realize that Secret Wars is literally not going to work out if they release it in just a couple years from now. They need to completely remove it off their schedules. Honestly, they need to forget about the convoluted multiverse stuff for a bit and just get back to basics, especially now that they have all the Fox properties that allow them to get back to basics. Like, I really, really think that if they can just get back to it, they could perhaps save themselves. And damage control is typically a good decision at times like these. Or they'll just completely start using AI to write their movie scripts based on how they used it in Secret Invasion, which, by the way, good job on ruining that too, Marvel. That's just really wonderful of you.